versus Surrender coming up as the final match of the day. So just to cleanse after the Warrior Mirror, we do have another Warrior, but it is going to be against Flurry's Rogue. And Flurry been doing pretty well so far as well in Grandmasters. Let's take a look at his deck list. He has leaned on Rogue quite heavily so far in Grandmasters, and it's not too much of a surprise. He's named himself also after a Rogue card. So we see what he's got now. It's a much more straightforward list as versus the one we saw from Shaxi. But for this, it looks pretty good to me. Just a solid, fairly aggressive Rogue list.
It looks more similar to what the Japanese players were bringing of Rogue last week, which had more of the weapon package, double pick, deadly poison, and double deckhand. He's got a deadly poison, though, I think for Walk the Plank, which is very interesting that he only includes one sap and one Walk the Plank, because it seems like if you have Walk the Plank, you're trying to hit mage, but then why would you cut sap is my thinking there, but a bit interesting.
Yeah, I think as well, the problem with sap sometimes is when you sap a Mountain Giant, it buys you time, but the Mountain Giant is often still very cheap the turn after, whereas Walk the Plank just removes it from the equation completely. So I don't know, I'm interested to see how this pays out. Not as good versus Warrior, of course. We can check out Surrender's list and see that no major surprise is a fairly straightforward Warrior list. The Japao Joybuzz is in there for some fun, and they're just a solid card in general, I think. But overall, no snip snaps, as you mentioned at the start of the show, and overall just a fairly solid all-round bottom Warrior.
Yeah, we've seen this deck enough times to know what the tech choices are, and this one seems not particularly tech towards Rogue, so that's a plus for Flurry because there's not much weapon removal. But I will say that overall, even though we've been saying that Bomb Warrior seems favored against Rogue in general, if anyone watched that video of the curve with TJ, he mentioned that overall, Rogues have been beating Warriors 55%, I think, throughout last week's stats at least. So maybe there's something we're missing, or perhaps the Rogues are just finding a way to make the game plan a bit more flexible.
Yeah, honestly, for me, at least in just my experience, it's difficult to argue, with some other stats, but for me, I think that the matchup, even if we say it's Bomb Warrior favorite, is barely Bomb Warrior favorite, because Rogue is extremely powerful, and if Bomb Warrior continues to play as a early game minion deck, and then you do have some clears, well, Rogue excels at dealing with early game minions. It's why it's good versus Hunter, for example, because Hunter's so minion based, it just deals with them and gains tempo. And also, Bomb Warrior specifically doesn't have great ways to heal outside of the shield blocks, and then realistically Dr. Boom hitting Blast Shield specifically.
True.
And Rogue can output so much damage that there's often not a lot Bomb Warrior can do about it. And double Waggle picks in there, the Leroys of course, the double Shadow Steps, double Deckhand, the Deadly Poison, double Eviscerate, lackeys that just carry games by themselves. There is plenty of damage in this Rogue deck to just kill Warrior, and Rogue goes too fast sometimes.
Yeah, I can definitely see it the more that I look at it, that Surrender shouldn't be feeling too safe here at all, especially since he's not got weapon projects and not even got Harrison Jones to threaten those Waggle picks. So Flurry can keep them at how many charges he so chooses.
Yeah, and then also have just way more control over what he bounces with those Waggle picks as well is super important, because forcing a bounce against a Rogue where they may not want it to go, or even if it's say a 50-50, there's one minion that would be good to bounce, one minion that would be bad, is so much better than letting Rogue do stuff. Because when you let Rogue make all of the decisions end up ending in your death most of the time. So Surrender is just getting ready now, but overall, I don't even see too many overly obvious choices in terms of tech for both of these players. There are schemes and Novice Engineers and Harrison for Flurry in one of his decks, and then there are like Town Crier, Weapon Project, Silence, and Harrison to go heavy weapon removal in the other. We might see him move to that since he does just drop an Elic, an Omega Assemblies, and the Japao Joybuzz, but nothing too overly drastic, I would say, that will affect the matchup super heavily.
Yeah, I just find it funny that Flurry's secondary deck looks very, very much for Token Druid, double Phantom Knives, and Dragon Maw Scorcher. Never heard of that in Rogue in my life, but clearly he talked to Don, because Don is bringing the Token Druid, and they are teammates. They have brought the same decks on more than a couple of weeks, so yeah. I guess those two were predicting that either you bring Token Druid, because it's maybe strong now with Snip Snap, or you bring something to side against it. And that really just goes to show how the different communication and the different teams can really shape the meta in ways you never expect, especially after following buffs.
Yeah, I think as well nods to Murloc Shaman and even just the token Shaman is there, because being able to just clear that board just removes issues of the potential of just a Bloodlust taking you down, which it often happens with the list these days. But in general, yeah, it's a super weird sideboard. Losing like the Waggle picks, for example, because against a token-based deck, one, you don't want to bounce minions, and you also swing 4 damage into like a 2 health minion. It's like, this might not be that good. See the players just getting ready. I think we were just waiting for Surrender to make sure he was 100% ready to go. But we're nice and we like Surrender, so we'll wait. We won't say, no, Flurry, press go now. Start the game, and Surrender, you've got to catch up a few turns.
Yeah.
But now the players are ready, and again, Surrender, fairly even score so far. I think it's 3-3 because he's not played yet this week. And Flurry as well, 4-2. So Flurry's looking good at the top of the leaderboard overall, or near the top, whereas Surrender does have some fighting to do to put himself in a good position.
Yeah, a win here could put them both at 4-3, which is definitely a fall of a giant in terms of Flurry, at least, who had such a strong start going in.
And speaking of strong starts, just getting the Town Crier down straight away means that Surrender's got a few removal options early game, or at least mid game. He does have the Dynomatic. He can even use the Devastator just on curve because he has such flexible choices.
Yep. For Flurry, though, he's got Coin Miscreant. That has never been bad in the history of its release.
Yeah. And the Shark. Does he?
Holding back now and trying to get 4 lackeys if you go Shark on 4 and then Miscreant, or Shark on 3 and then prep something Miscreant. I can see it, but purely because he has prep as an activator for Miscreant. Because holding back now, it involves having to coin Shark.
Yeah, and the most important part is being able to coin Shark means the Shark dodges the Dynomatic, which means the Shark lives 100% of the time against Warrior.
Yeah, it also lives against Triple Warpath because that's not available yet, so you make a very strong point. And in this type of situation, even if Flurry doesn't land a sap target, I don't think he's too sad just to use prep as a Miscreant activator, because the payoff is just so insane.
Yeah, Miscreant is the MVP in Rogue right now. We've seen rogue lists that are literally just miscreant.com. Just being able to just summon lackeys, and those lackeys get the job done.
I'm going to bookmark that website.
There you go.
Surrender has his choice of 4-cost things. I feel like the Devastator looks like the most intuitive because it's still got a decent amount of health that Rogue can't one-shot. But it will get super punished by the sap.
Yeah.
But how much can he expect exactly prep sap Miscreant or prep sap Edwin or some type of thing like that?
Yeah, and the key is, does equip in the only thing that would cause me to want to equip this Wrench Caliber if I could not see both hands is the fact you have 2 of them that maybe preemptively loading up the Wrench Caliber means you can swing into a minion next turn, which then makes the Dynomatic more likely to kill the Shark. That's the thing that would push me towards Wrench Caliber. But I think if I was just sat being Surrender right now, I would probably play the Devastator.
It's a real tough one. Surrender's going to take every last second to make the decision, but does come to the same conclusion as us. And he's going to get the bad news that not only is prep sap Miscreant available, but a Battle Cry on the Lackey, Ethereal, or the Evolve one. Yeah, wow.
Welcome to Rogue Town. Population, most of the Hearthstone player base right now.
Okay, he didn't get the spell Lackey, but he
Evolve's
could get...
not bad though.
Yeah, or even just 2/2 drops. How bad does Doomsayer punish him if he gets that? Pretty bad, I would say. Suddenly his hand is looking like air.
Well, he always saps this.
Yes, I agree.
Well, okay, maybe not always. He could have swung in and played the deal 2, which deals 4 to kill off it. But sap is just way more of a tempo game.
Right, and
you're not getting punished by the Omega Devastator being at 10 mana, for example.
It also just gets value out of the prep.
Yeah.
Why is everybody getting Ancient Watchers lately?
Because it's a 2-drop?
The third I've seen, including
answer?
Last night. Surrender, unfortunately, doesn't have Brawl. He's running 2 of now. I think he had the 1 of last week, but he's switched the list around a little bit. Still has the Geppetto, which makes me happy. But
This is fine though, right? He can just
Yeah.
wrench caliber down the Shark. He can shield slam the miscreant if he's that afraid of it being bounced.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's not the end of the world. It's unfun to get for your opponent to get that much value, but I think it could have been worse.
He could go for a Militia Commander over the Wrench Caliber, but I do like the Wrench Caliber because it lines up just nicely against the Shark. And I feel like Flurry can very easily react to any minion pressure Surrender puts on board, because things like the Kobold Lackey can snipe nearly any minion, and there's still 3 unaccounted for lackeys that Surrender has to think about.
Good thing is removing this Shark. Like, this is one of the most least impactful Sharks I've seen.
Most least.
Yes, that somehow makes sense in my world at least. It's one of the least impactful Sharks I've seen in a long time, and it was still pretty good.
Yeah.
But sometimes Sharks live more than a couple of turns, and things get really silly.
Very true. And we're going to see that funny interaction again about the Ancient Watcher soaking up Dynamite. Never mind, it's getting evolved. So this 3/3 can attack, but it actually makes the Dynamatic neater for Surrender. Granted, I think... Okay, if that were an Ancient Watcher, with the Wrench Caliber attack, there would be 6 health on board, right?
Yep. Also, this means that Surrender can just attack into a 2/2 instead of a 3/3.
Yeah.
And it does the same job.
Gonna start off with a Mega Assembly. I like that he's not getting too greedy with it. Beryllium is sap proof, although he has seen the one of sap already.
Walk the plank proof though.
Yes. Is it too clunky though? I feel like Surrender's hand has got enough mechs that he could just get rewarded for this. And he's got a lot of forecast things that the Coppertail doesn't look like it appeals too much for me. Is there any argument for the Faithful Lumi just as a very cheap card?
Well, the funny thing for me is the Beryllium Nullifier just helps curve, right? Because like a lot of people talk about Beryllium Nullifier as a magnetic, but post buff, a 4/8 that can't be targeted on its own is just okay in my world at least. It's gonna go for the Coppertail instead, something that's a little bit more reliable about sticking to the board at least for one turn, a little bit cheaper. So next turn you can Coppertail and then a 3-drop as well. But yeah, I wouldn't have hated the Beryllium.
I feel like Coppertail is one of those cards that flies under the radar that is low-key pretty good in many situations, especially against Warrior, as Warrior, when you put it down and then your opponent is trying to go wide on board, and then there's no way they can play around Warpath. Suddenly your Warpath is dealing with their stuff, and they can't trade it away into your minion that you develop because it's stealth.
I know Cantaloupe was played it to quite high legend in Mech Paladin because it's just another minion that you can throw down on 4 and then say, well, I will be able to stick something to this because it's very unlikely that it dies to anything with the stealth.
We're going to see a rather large Edwin come to play here, and Flurry going about this the correct way to not take any damage. Clears the Dynamatic in the meantime. Just hoping to dodge a Doomsayer, I'm pretty sure. That's a Death Rattle, give your minions +1 attack, right? Okay. So this is a tough position for Surrender. No Shield Slam in sight. Very far off from having Devastator active. I feel like the turn involves having Coppertail Stealth just so he has that insurance to deal with Edwin on the next turn by trading that in along with having the Commander. But man, does he take a lot of damage in the meantime.
Yeah, it feels really bad without anything that's super hard removal.
Maybe it's Coppertail and Acolyte, because the Acolyte in theory looks like it trades well against most of these lackeys, and there's no way Flurry's gonna sink 8 damage into it. But even if Surrender manages to survive and clear the Edwin, Flurry's got Wagglepick SI into a Myra's turn, which looks near unbeatable.
Right, and this is one of the reasons I was talking about earlier, where Rogue often just does a ton of damage. It's one of the most like high damage short time decks in the game, and Warrior can't gain armor as quickly as Rogue can deal damage, and the same with removal. So I don't know, I think this matchup's super close as a matchup overall, not specifically this game.
I think Flurry has 19 damage if he trades in the Death Rattle thing, and then that gives his board 13 attack, 17 with Wagglepick, and then 19 with the SI.
Jeez. And then Myra's into most of the rogue cards means that
Yeah.
Surrender's very dead.
I don't think he even minds giving Surrender 2 draws just by...
Like I said, Surrender could have 100 cards in his hand. It doesn't matter because he only has 8 mana. So there's limitations on what Surrender can even do in a defensive manner at all. I mean, that's a good.
There's a brawl.
Is it too late though? Like,
He's-
we can see that it's pretty much too late. Because if he
What?
brawls and shield blocks, he goes up to 8. He takes 4. So
Yeah.
all Flurry needs is 4 damage to win the game next turn.
Off of Myra's, it's
And-
very likely to get eviscerated.
And that's if he wins the brawl.
Yeah.
If he loses the brawl, he can't shield block and shield slap.
But we're living
So-
in the world where he
Yeah,
wins the brawl.
even at a stretch, this brawl is still a distant hope. And it's just too much, isn't it? It's so nuts. The Myra's, of course, helps a ton with the consistency in which Flurry can draw damage to finish this game. But for me, it's just the deck on average is just nutty.
The Warpath got me a little bit excited, but there's no way that he can use Shield Slam, Warpath, and clear everything
enough
because the
mana.
SI has too much health. Yeah. I think he has to take the 1 in 5 brawl. And even then, he's going to get the bad news that the last card from Flurry is Myra's.
Yeah, Flurry has 3 mana to deal 4 damage, so exactly an Eviscerate or double deckhand. Maybe there's
Okay.
something else?
Oh, this is the right way to do it. Trust Surrender to spot it.
Oh, okay, I didn't
Yeah.
even look at that.
Yeah.
Well, still, the clear has been done. The Myra's is played. Surrender's upset, understandably so.
Yeah.
But let's see what's that. Double Shadow Stab.
Leroy.
Oh, that's an Invest game.
A bomb for your troubles.
So he's not going to get it right now, but
There's
that's just a lot of damage. The Eviscerate's really the big one because it's a cheap spell that can be used to just make up so much damage, and Surrender having it post shield blocked. Like, what's he got? It's like exactly boom to have a significant health gain next turn.
and I don't even think it gets him out of range.
It won't get him out of range of this,
Yeah.
of Leroy's Shadow Step
Yeah.
and everything. But I'm just saying, the best Surrender can do still isn't even close to enough
Exactly.
out of the average Myras with this deck.
Uh-huh. And, oh, there's just lethal now that he got the damage lackey.
Oh, okay, sure.
Prep Abyss.
Yeah, Shadow Steps for days, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And that is going to be game number 1. Flurry taking the win with the Rogue against Warrior. And Flurry, like I said, is 4-2 so far in Grandmasters. And a lot of those games and a lot of those wins have been from Rogue.
For sure. I mean, every time I see this matchup, my mind starts to change about who's actually favored. Although, granted, the fact that Surrender is not running the weapon removal package is a huge
Right.
deal. And yeah, I don't think Surrender was accounting for Rogue as one of his matchups this week, and it's been really tough to get the reads. I think on players like Dawn, for example, he keeps changing, and who would have thought he brings Token Druid? But Flurry has been a bit more consistent on staying on Rogue, as you
Yeah,
mentioned.
even I think Alutimu has also changed a fair bit in the league so far as well, whereas there are some players like Blitzchung who's predominantly brought Hunter, and there are some players as well who are leaning heavily on Warrior or have been leaning heavily on Warrior. But yeah, I think the funny thing is Flurry just plays Rogue and wins anyway, so it's so nuts that that's doable. And in terms of the sideboards, I don't see them changing too much. I don't think Flurry... I'm still confused as to what this tertiary sideboard is we see from Rogues, especially Flurry's list. He removes a Backstab, 2 Deckhands, an SI7 Agent, and Walk the Plank for 2 Schemes, 2 Novice Engineers, and a Harrison.
I mean,
I don't know why you want to play that when you can just kill someone.
This looks to me like it is the Warrior sideboard, if anything, because of what we've seen from Shaxi, basically, when he discovered a scheme to do crazy things. I feel like
and they're
this
both
is
weird.
there. Yeah. I feel like this is there to abuse Togwaggle and Myra's in that interaction. Sorry, Heist Baron Togwaggle.
Yep.
So he can do the funny stuff with Leroy or even Kobold Lackeys for a bunch of damage out of nowhere. And I do think that these cards that he's cut, like the Backstab, Deckhands, SI, and Walk the Plank, are not too impactful against Warrior. So I think Flurry's going to switch. And Surrender, I do think his tertiary is for Rogue. not sure if the Spellbreaker is particularly for Rogue or just something to hedge against other matchups, but definitely the weapon removal package has to be good.
So Surrender's tertiary deck has not gone all in on Silence like some of the other players' decks we've seen, or Frosty, talking about double EMP, double Spellbreaker. So I think one Spellbreaker is just a fine minion, especially when Van Cleef's knocking around in any deck, that's just okay. Maybe you could even silence a Shark as well and force some kind of Shadow Step to get it live again. But I don't know. I think, at least for Flurry's sake, I hope he sticks to his main deck, because I think just killing people is better than trying to play a long game versus Worry.
It's true, but I'm trying to think if the cards he removed are actually actively helping kill people. Aside from the deckhand, I think those help the game plan for sure. SI to me is more of a reactive card, and so is Walk the Plank and Backstab. So I don't actually think... Yeah, and we just got the word that they're both on tertiary, so... I mean, you said you would be happy to see Flurry stick on this primary, but I want to see what this tertiary can do.
Okay, well, we're going to. And as we said, Surrender is on the tertiary as well, so he goes Town Crier. We can check out the decks, actually. Let's just throw the decks up and we can talk about them. So we see, let's go to Flurry's first. So as we mentioned, we did talk a lot about this, of course, but let's have a look. So it's the double scheme, the Novice Engineers, the Harrison Jones, so Flurry will be able to draw more aggressively, but we'll see, we'll see.
I just wish if people are running double scheme that they would play a Pogo.
I wish they wouldn't.
Okay,
but
we do know the power of Engineer with the Shark. It's not quite Witchwood Piper levels of cycle heavy like how we've seen from Shaxi, but I think I do see the principle of the deck, which is just trying to get to your Myra sooner rather than later, trying to get to your Togwaggle and the Lackey Generators, in which case you can do crazy things with the scheme. Especially if a Shark sticks and you get double treasures.
Right, yeah, that's insane. Let's take a look at Surrender's tertiary list as well and how he has built his warrior. So you can see that the Town Crier added in, which is nice to run 2 of. The Weapons Project to mess with the rogue weapons and also gain some armor on demand. Spellbreaker, not mind-blowing in this matchup, but maybe stops you being run over by an Edwin, which is, we've seen it happen many times so far in Grandmasters. And Harrison Jones, just further weapon hate for the rogue player, because the big issue is just Waggle Pit. Does crazy stuff with the Shadow Step Death Rattle, but most importantly, it's just 8 damage, so 16 if you run 2.
I also want to note that the removal of Omega Assembly might on paper look strange if you're trying to go into... If you expect Flurry to go to the tertiary deck, which is heavier on value, maybe you'd like the Omega Assembly because it's generally good in value matchups.
Right.
3 cards for the price of 1. But actually, when the Rogue gets that type of late game plan going, I don't think the Warrior can ever go toe-to-toe with them. So I think it's more important for the Warrior to just seize the early game and use that weapon removal to, you know, completely negate their Waggle picks, and then just try to get there with the bombs before the Rogue can do the crazy things with Leroy.
That's it, because there's a weird double-edged sword effect of Rogue going more late game. It also means Rogue is more likely to hit more bombs because they draw the deck more heavily, and the game can potentially go a little bit longer. So yeah, I do have to agree. I think there's no point playing for a heavy control matchup with Bomb Warrior. I think you want to play aggressive, answer the big threats from the Rogue, and just push as many bombs as possible.
Makes a lot of sense, and Surrender's got the Goblin in the opening hand to do so. And the keep of Blastmaster Boom, I think, is definitely telling of his game plan here, which is to, strangely, be the aggressor. Maybe not so strange.
It's just funny that I feel like the roles have flipped now. They changed to the counter decks, and now the late game player is now on the aggression, and the aggressive player is now on more of a late game overall plan.
And that just goes to show you why archetypes like Bomb Warrior and Tempo Rogue have been so dominant since the start of GM. It's because they can be built and teched in so many ways that they become a little bit more flexible or just good all around like Bomb Warrior. Surrender already faced with the decision of whether he wants to coin Clockwork Goblin, but I think he would probably want to save coin for Boom.
Yeah, or even just the flexibility that playing Town Crier gives you.
Sure.
If Surrender feels the need to just coin out a Militia Commander next turn, he can, or he can save it and just play the Clockwork Goblin on curve. The 1-2 isn't too horrendous for a give it up of 2 armor. So yeah, I like this overall. We see Flurry not going to prep out anything too nutty, nothing to proc this Miscreant.
The game is looking similar to his original game plan, which is Shark into Miscreant Shenanigans. But the difference is Surrender has had much more early game, and Flurry is not on the sap to remove things conveniently. So,
And I think the biggest difference overall is that Flurry cannot go Shark because he's not on the coin, which means in the opposite fashion, if you can coin Shark out quicker when you're on the coin as Rogue, it also means if your opponent has coin instead of you, they can coin out the Dynamatic to kill the Shark on curve.
very good point, and probably exactly where Flurry decides to go for Life Drinker instead here. Not to mention, it kind of fights for board a little bit better in this situation, but Surrender's got an easy Militia Commander, continues to push damage, and you're right, just so funny how the roles have totally swapped in this game.
Ziliak's going to come down and buy Flurry some time.
Wrench Caliber is a great pickup for Surrender. Easy answer to Ziliak's, shuffles yet another bomb. So after the third swing, sorry, the second swing of the Wrench Caliber, barring Flurry drawing a bomb, the boom will be fully active on turn 6. That's insane.
I'm also sneezing a lot today. Sorry if you can hear that, any
Bless
viewers.
you, Raven.
Thank you.
And now Flurry can go for Shark Novice for double draw. Alternatively, he could try and get the Miscreant down so he can go Lackey Togwaggle next turn.
Go Novice first.
Yeah.
You can always see what you draw as well, just in case it changes anything. But I think getting Miscreant down now is just going to have to happen.
And these are the type of rogue turns where you're presented with so many options and so many different lines you can take over just not the course of just this turn. Like the use of the Shadow Step. Is Flurry so far behind on board that he cannot try and Shadow Step Togwaggle for extra treasures?
Potentially, he might just need the 5/5. Or even there's some queries as to whether you even plan on Shadow Stepping the Cobalt Lackey. After you play it, obviously not now. But like the Cobalt Lackey with Shark, with Eviscerate, with Shadow Step, you suddenly start to do a lot of damage from hand. He's not quite there yet, but it's something you do have to consider.
Look at this, Raven.
I'm looking. I'm seeing bombs.
Yep.
I'm seeing booms.
I like how Surrender coins first before he does anything else, so Flurry knows what's coming.
Well, one of two, right? Because he could have been playing Hero Boom.
Sure.
But yes, either way, Boom is hitting the board.
And even if this rogue had Fan of Knives, it does not. I mean, in this case, it does not. But even if it did, it's just going to take so much damage. The average, again, 12.5.
So, Shark into Lackey.
And Eviscerate can deal
this,
with
or he
boom.
can Shadow Step Lackey if he wants and do it that way. Hold the Abyss.
I don't see a way out of this.
This was just too quick. Although I've seen stranger things happen, especially from Rogue. Is he going to Shadow Step?
It's probably too low impact.
Okay.
Although the weird thing about this is that it leaves a minion on board for a Boombot to trade into and potentially snipe the Shark.
I guess he thinks the Shark is often dead anyway.
Yeah,
Warpath,
Dinomatic.
Dinomatic.
The Dino is real sick here.
Even a Brawl now, you know, funnily enough, would probably do the job.
If Flurry were on a lower health total, I would definitely recommend one of those AoEs that also kills off the bombs, but Surrender knows that the bombs can just get extra damage by sticking on board a couple more turns, and Flurry has not had the time.
Okay, well, there's a chance now. There is a chance.
You can't even go for Lackey Prep Fan anymore. Like, discover the fan.
Yeah, I think he just goes like heavily face, right? Prep Shiv just to draw again.
Guess so.
I think he needs Leroy. Oh, he's gonna trade. Okay, okay. I didn't know whether he was just gonna go for it, go face for 8, as long as the weapon doesn't get removed, and try and get into Leroy for Shasta Leroy for an extra a bit of damage, and then the Kobold Lackey to do some more, and maybe you get there. It's a long stretch, and Flurry's decided to actually play a bit of a slower game.
So Surrender can go Militia Commander into the 1/4, trade off a bomb. 3 bombs can go face, put him to 12, and then he can actually Warpath at the end of that.
Yeah, I think you actually reduce some of that, right? So you just Militia Commander, go face with everything, and then Warpath.
Oh, he could even Weapons Project to bounce back one of these things. Although, if it isn't lethal this turn, I don't think he would like to bounce back Ethereal Lackey. He could even Shield Slam the 1/4.
You may as well trade if you're playing the Militia Commander, right?
Well, then the Militia can trade into the 1/1.
But you're going to Warpath.
Are we?
I mean, pushing 4 and then Warpath? Maybe, maybe not.
I think it depends how much this bomb does. So now this is, on average, not lethal.
How much did it need to do, though?
Your magic shall not save me.
Okay, so he's going to silence the Militia Commander just to get a 4/3 on the board, and Surrender's feeling pretty happy about this.
I think it makes a lot of sense. It's so hard for Flurry to both clear the bombs, just as the first problem, and second, have something on board to buffer the bomb damage.
I don't think there's anything that exists right now. You probably needed some kind of aggressive play with a prep vanish from a Discover,
Well,
just to maybe buy one turn window.
he's gonna go for the Lackey, Cogwaggle, prep Treasure, and I guess the Wand can do.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to do something, right? And just prep Wand.
I'm
I'm confused about that.
This looks like it's good in the late game, but it looks like the immediate problem is surviving against the boom bots, in which case you would not rather draw Tog.
Oh, I know why he did it. He wants the Togs to soak the bombs this turn. So he wanted to draw as many Togs as he could because there's 0 mana. He would get treasures and also soak bomb hits, which is, Flurry's just a genius.
Yeah,
it didn't work out for him, but Flurry is just a genius. He's a good rogue player in case anyone didn't know. Because that was just correct, right? It's the only minion in the deck that can soak bomb hits. Oh, 3.
I don't think anybody was wondering about Flurry's rogue skills, but he's also got rope skills. This is very often lethal by just face Warpath, but Surrender.
And
Okay, yeah, he
which,
knows that was guaranteed.
Is guaranteed lethal there, and Surrender is going to even it up versus Flurry in the last match of the day. So only one more game left, and it's a 1-game sample size, but again, I don't know how much those cards really help Flurry in this matchup. He's a much better rogue player than I am. That is just factually correct. So I'm sure there are good reasons for it, and I'd like to catch up with Flurry after this just to talk about tertiary decks. I think I want to talk to all the players more about secondary and tertiary decks because there's so many interesting choices that go into them, and especially this week, I've seen some strange ones.
Just learn Korean, Raven. What are you doing?
I've been busy.
We'll get Dawkin in here and translate one of these days. But yeah, I mean, there's been so many, such a wide range of deck choices, deck building choices, archetype choices in APAC, and I think perhaps among the 3 regions we see the strangest stuff out of APAC. Don't think anybody can argue about that unless you still find Pogo Rogue strange. No, I think it's just good.
I also think that's naturally just a part of the way the region is built. In the Americas, yes, it includes many different places before I start digging at some kind of weird hole, but a lot of the players do it feels like one overall community that maybe due to language barriers across different countries, you look at Japan, Korea, and then some of the other regions too, they speak different languages, which means they don't often communicate that often with each other, so there isn't the unified decision making of what decks are good and what decks are bad, what ideas are good, what ideas are bad, because you look at the Americas region specifically, there is a good core of people that you generally look to in that region to say, okay, what are they playing, what's good, and then many other players get ideas from that, and then that trickles down. Whereas in Asia Pacific, I think it's just a lot of different groups, and they just make their own decisions, and that's just the way it is.
That's a fair point. And on top of that issue, APAC submits first when it comes to every week of deck submission for GM. And then after APAC has been sort of the guinea pig, I suppose, for what the meta looks like that week, EU then submits and then America submits. So I think when you have that first round of submissions that everyone can look at, people probably get more similar ideas as opposed to like submitting blind, which is what APAC does.
Yeah, take a look at all of the most of the playoffs from the past few years of HCT. When Europe submitted did the first week every time, and then following that, Americas and Asia Pacific would always be sort of like flowed from each other after that to see how the meta was going to shake out. We are just waiting for the players to get ready for game. And number 3, I believe they're going to stick to the same decks, but we'll get an update on that shortly. But what a day it's been already. It's kind of nuts. There's 5 matches today, 6 tomorrow as well. And I believe we've just had confirmation that they are going to be... Oh, okay.
Wow.
So, sorry for just starting. That was unprofessional of me. But Flurry's on the tertiary deck, which is the same as last game. Surrender's actually swapped back to his primary deck. So he's removed again the weapons projects, the Town Crier, the Spellbreaker, and the Harrison, and gone back to double Omega Devastator, double Augmented Alec, and the good old Geppetto Joybuzz. So I wonder if there's some levels of mind games going on right now.
This to me looks like the clearest example of a mind game that we've seen in Specialists so far because of just the way the tertiary and primary decks interact, from specifically the way that these two built them. And I think when both are on tertiary, I feel like Surrender ends up favored. So I actually think Surrender thought Flurry would move back to primary. It's really tough.
And then is Surrender's tertiary deck that bad versus Flurry's primary deck? I don't think so. I don't know. Let's just see how this game plays out. The important thing, or at least I feel the most important thing, is Surrender, his deck does not have weapon removal, but Flurry might think it does. And Flurry might think it has a lot of weapon removal because there is 3 in the tertiary deck that Surrender just played. So I am very excited just to see how Flurry, and if Flurry does anything weird with his usage of weapons or holds them for longer, based on him thinking that Surrender might not know. Never mind, it's all gone out the window.
Yeah, because now Surrender has shown that he has Omega Assembly, and I think Flurry with a little bit of a reaction there. And I think he said something to himself, and maybe he's as confused about the switch back as we are.
I cannot speak Korean. I definitely cannot lip read Korean.
Get good, Raven. What are you doing?
I need to. I've never even been to Korea. You've been. So you should be able to speak it. That's how it goes, right?
I know very limited phrases, mostly from K-pop. But let's not dig
I'd rather
that
not
hole.
go there. Let's dip straight out of that
yeah.
one. Okay, so...
Fat skip on that. So Flurry can go Coin, Miscreant, always good. Lines up okay to survive against Clockwork Goblin. But again, he's presented with that option of coining Shark and then having something to do with Miscreant that gets more lackeys. So.
And he's also presented with the even slower option of setting up getting the lackeys and then going Shark into Edwin with lackeys and that double buffs. And Edwin's just on average are like 22/22s once you have Shark on the board.
That's a pretty high average.
Yeah, I'm just randomly said that's the average. I'm presuming my authority, as a caster, will make people believe that is in fact now the average.
Flurry can just go for the huge Edwin right now though, with Shadow Step, with Coin, and with lackeys. He's even gonna get backstab. That's really insane here.
Yep, that's gonna line up pretty well as far as I'm concerned. Clears off this Goblin, and you just turn up the heat. Going for Shadow Step.
So how big is this Edwin, Raven?
On average, it's big. Another
Daring
backstab
Escape
as well.
Yeah, you probably don't want Daring Escape because you're gonna go
Just
Edwin.
backstab your Ethereal Lucky. Or whatever. You're gonna trade the 1/1, so just backstab the Ethereal. I doubt he's gonna do it because it's a reasonable activator for Miscreant next turn, but it would be funny, and funny is really what I look for in Hearthstone games.
That definitely informs a lot of your casting then. But yeah, I mean, having it as an activator for Miscreant is very good. On top of that, I don't think the difference between 10-10 and 12-12 Edwin is too big. You can see from Surrender's expression that he is not happy to see that.
Yeah. I think if we're going to get serious just for a second, most importantly, Surrender can't brawl.
Yep.
So the 1/1 doesn't give him a chance to brawl and win and get the 1/1 left, because there's a whole turn until that happens.
And
I think going into turn 5, I think I would have backstabbed that 1-1.
he could still do it next turn. And Surrender doesn't play the Clockwork, I think clearly because he doesn't want to give Flurry an option to remove his own minion and the Clockwork Goblin and leave only the Edwin on board. I think it's very heads up from
And
Surrender.
now, with the lack of attack, I mean, there's not many things you can attack into, but with a lack of attack, I wonder if Flurry has the read that Brawl is about as good as Surrender's ever going to get. And he could just backstab Dagger Pass.
He could.
And like, and that would be 1, a heads up sick play from Flurry, and 2, correct? Because then what does Surrender do against it? He can't kill a 12-12. He's not playing his silence. This is so good from Flurry. He isn't playing Spellbreaker because he's moved to the primary deck that Flurry 100% knows. There is no answer that can stop this Edwin hitting again.
Absolutely. I mean, we can just stop casting and start applauding at this moment. Flurry,
There you go.
like, we already knew he was a good rogue player, and maybe this play looked simple, but it is just such good recognition. There was even temptation to maybe backstab and then Shark, and then you're saying like, okay, if you Brawl and the Shark wins, I'm happy. He's got a Miscreant in hand. If you Brawl and Edwin wins, I'm super happy. But
there's even backstab Miscreant because, believe it or not, activating Miscreant is pretty good in Rogue, and getting more lackeys is pretty good.
Well,
He could have done it. I'm just saying it's a play that you could do that is in a isolation, a decent play, but you just don't need it. Flurry literally doesn't need any other thing apart from this Van Cleave to win the game.
I do think that out of all the lines he could have taken, this one was the best one by far.
Yep.
Surrender, I'm looking at the list. No owls, no spell breakers, no funny business.
There's nothing.
Yeah,
I think he's just already lost.
I agree.
He's not going to, but I don't even think there's a way to do enough damage without dying. I think if he conceded right now, it's the same outcome.
No, there's still an out for drawing a 1-drop and then Brawl for next turn, but
Yeah,
in the
okay.
meantime, he's taken a casual 24 damage
Yeah.
and is so far off from being able to pull it back even after winning a 50-50
Yeah.
Brawl of a theoretical top deck 1-drop.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, you nailed it there. It's literally 1-drop into Brawl into win Brawl. That is a very, I won't guess at the percentage. On average, it's probably less than 1% chance of exactly happening. And if it doesn't happen, I mean, Flurry doesn't need to play anything else.
Yeah. I just like attack, redagger.
Yeah, there's literally one answer to this Van Cleave, and that's exactly the 1-drop into Brawl.
I'm just trying to think if he's ever scared of just, say, a Zilliax sticking, in which case you would rather have a minion to help deal with it over the next turn.
Does it matter? Because he has Zilliax and his Dagger Swing next turn.
I know.
So I think he didn't need to play the Shark, and Surrender doesn't need to draw the 1-drop.
But look
Flurry's
at this.
giving him the out.
But Flurry knows that even if the Shark lives, Life Drinker is a Fireball next turn.
A Fireball isn't lethal.
It's not lethal, you're right.
No!
Oh, man.
So, Flurry, be careful.
But still, this is still so good because Life Drinker and then Cable Rat double lackeys.
Oh, well, Eviscerate's a pretty good card as well.
Yes, that means he's 2 off lethal.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
wait.
9 damage.
Just a little bit short in terms of mana. But,
Oh, it's... Oh.
I mean, we can say that Flurry gave Surrender a quote-unquote out, but this is just insane. I think the Shark was correct there still. Just because the follow-up was so insane. He had Cable Rat, he had Miscreant.
I'm just looking at all these lackeys and be like... And the next thing to be announced for early rotation.
All the
First
lackeys.
was Gen and Baku, and now it's cards that are called lackeys.
And
Coming soon to a 2020 near
But
you.
look, the lackeys weren't insane this game. It was Edwin Van Cleave.
But lackeys are insane every game.
Not
Look at 'em all.
necessarily. I'm still not on the Shark hype train as opposed to being in terms of saying it's strictly better than Raiding Party. Of course, it looks super insane here, but this situation of the lackeys being able to pressure Surrender is purely because he couldn't deal with Edwin for the first 2 turns it stuck.
Okay. Then we can go and rewatch Shax's games where all he did was generate lackeys and still win the games.
Lackeys are good, but Edwin is better. That's my hot take. Dynamatic gonna leave a 1/1 miscreant in all likelihood. Surrender instead just gonna go for...
He needs to do something.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good, but he needs to do something to win. But as far as I can see, 18 million Kobold Lackeys plus an Eviscerate finishes up this game. And Flurry is going to go 5-2 so far in Asia Pacific Grandmasters. And Surrender is going to go down to 3-4. Flurry continuing to show his skill and dominance with Rogue. And I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. Considering Rogue got nerfed, no one cares. It's still a good class.
And to me, this is also just signaling that maybe Silence is not just there as respect for mech decks and for everybody who's got Silence in their sideboard or even in the primary deck like Pacha with the Owl. I think that's a really heads-up inclusion just because of Edwin, and I cannot emphasize enough how broken this card is sometimes. Sorry, I'm just gonna say it.
Well, Edwin just allows you to sometimes win games way easier than you would anyway, because there just aren't that many decks outside of Silence, or decks that include Silence, that can actually deal with Edwin if it's massive. Sometimes, obviously, it gets stupidly large because of things like Shark. But anyway, let's take a look at the results for the day and give you a bit of a recap. Bit of a longer day than yesterday, but still some 2-0s knocking around. We had Shaxi take a win over Petra. 2-0 not only in this match, but 2-0 in Grandmasters as well, as Shaxi's beat Petra twice.
Yes.
And then we have Staz took a loss versus Rivius, and Samuel Zhao took a win versus Blitzchung. So that is a big fat 0-2 overall for Secret Hunter today. And those players taking some hits, whereas Rivius and Samuel Zhao get some wins on the board.
It's a 0-3, including yesterday for the series wins, and 0-6 in game wins, I'm pretty sure, for the Secret Hunter, even though we saw Blitzchung get a little bit close in one of those games. It's just unfortunate, and I think this is the new Token Druid, I gotta say. Token Druid is good now, and the Dawn is like just...
The Dawn's playing it. Wow, throw some shade towards Chonsu.
I'm not saying that he's playing, I was gonna say, now that he's built it with Snip Snap. Okay, and Vargoth.
Whatever.
Anyway, match 4, Tom60229 versus Frosty was one of the few Bomb Warrior mirrors that we see in APAC, but it is a matchup that anyone who's watched the other regions should be familiar with, and I think definitely a masterclass in how to play it from Frosty, despite being so unfavored going into their secondary deck, or rather Tom's secondary managed to still take a win. I think that one was the match to watch from today, if anything, and then Flurry versus Surrender. All the rogues just showing up the Warrior, making me question who actually is favored in that matchup.
And making Blizzard question what exactly do they have to do to cut Rogue's win rate, because they nerfed multiple cards and only Rogue cards, and it was not enough. Let's take a look at, wait, what are we looking at? The standings, that's what we're looking at. I had to remind myself then as we got deep in the matchup review. But Shaxi rocking it 7-1 at the top. Bear in mind, we have one more day of play left, so the scores that do not add up to 8 will do by the end of tomorrow. But Shaxi, Dawn, Glory still there. Tyler hot on the heels, but then Alutimu, Flurry doing well, holding that second place spot. And then Frosty moving up into top 3. We spoke to him. He was 1-3 at one point in Grandmasters, and now he's up there in top 3, and that is a spot into playoffs.
Yes, just 1-3 series in a row, and then having that win over particularly Tom means he just swapped slots, slid in that top 3, and now Tom is the one who wants to catch up a little bit, although players like Rivius and Surrender still have their games this week, just like Frosty and Tom, so those slots are not too final, but Staz and Chonsu both will be playing tomorrow, but I think they've got a lot to make up for at this point.
Yeah, there is. There is plenty of time, though. There are tons more matches left before the final playoff spots are decided in those top 3 slots. But congratulations to all the players today. It's been fantastic, even with a Warrior Mirror that, frankly, I enjoyed, as long as it's just 1 or 2 now and again. But we've got plenty more Hearthstone this weekend for you guys as well. We have finished here in the Asia Pacific region, but we've got Europe coming up soon with Admirable and Gallon, who's been doing a fantastic job over there. And then the usual suspects, TJ and Frodan, are going to be bringing you Americas after that, depending on how long you really want to stay up for. But thanks a lot for watching today from us. We'll be back tomorrow, bringing you the final day of Asia Pacific this week. Have a great night, day, or morning. Enjoy some more Hearthstone. We'll see you tomorrow.